from Microlink. We are being recorded today. I wanted to remind you that we've got a closed caption button. We've also got a scripting that's going to actually take a note of everything that we say, and we're then going to send it out. Sorry, I've got a bit of a stutter on today. We're joined by NASA, the CEO of Microlink. Welcome. We've got the lovely Chris Holloway from PwC, who's the Digital Accessibility Manager. We've got Kim Whippy, who's the Inclusion and Enablement Services Lead at PwC. That is a mouthful, Kim. And the lovely Chris Patno from Google, the MA Lead for Accessibility and Digital Inclusion. Housekeeping today, if you've got questions, please just put them in the chat or raise a hand. Can we raise a hand on this? I think it's just chat, isn't it?
Yes, you can raise a hand.
We will come back to you as soon as we possibly can. To give you visual descriptor, we were just talking before we came on air then about whether or not visual descriptors are actually best practice or not. So I'm going to actually describe myself, and then I'm going to leave it down to my lovely guests to see if they want to as well. I'm a tall, red-headed, red lipstick, huge lady wearing a pair of glasses, white. Kim.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Hello, everybody, and apologies that my job title is definitely a bit of a mouthful. I guess, put it simply, I am PwC's enablement lead, so my remit is anything to do with disability inclusion at the firm. And to follow your lead, Tracy, I'm a white woman with dark brown curly hair, and I'm sat in a PwC office room this afternoon.
Thank you. Chris Holloway.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And yeah, I'll say I work alongside Kim. So my role is to look after the assistive technology that's used and coming into the firm, but also looking at how we upskill people on how to use it and obviously make sure that's supported. So yeah, I'm going to follow obviously Kim. So I'm a white 37-year-old male. I've got a really funky wallpaper background behind me, which is probably the best wallpapering I've ever done in my life. So I'm quite proud of that. I'm wearing a blue shirt today and I've got short brown hair.
Thank you. And we're going with the other Christopher.
So my name is Christopher Patno. Hello, I am the EMEA lead for Google for accessibility. My remit is to understand what disability means in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, and bring that back into Google so we can make our platforms and products better. I am a white male of a particular age with gray hair, a gray soul patch, black glasses, and a sort of a safari shirt in honor of today's heat wave.
Fabulous, thank you. And NASA.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining one of our great webinar sessions working with DWP. I am Nasser Siabi. I'm the Chief Executive and co-founder of Microlink. So this is my life for 30 years. My description is easy. Think about George Clooney, and I'm not him. So I've got, my color is kind of white, pale white, Persian origin. So it's difficult to describe what that is. Slight tint of green, I think. Gray hair and glasses and blue shirt.
Can I just ask, Christopher, you mentioned that there's been some discussion around it. What are the odds against visual descriptors?
What I've read and learned from speaking with people is that it's helpful when it's useful and relevant to the conversation. Otherwise, if it's just, look, I'm woke, I'm doing this because I want people to know that I am aware that I'm not sighted, it's sometimes not useful. So when it's useful, it's great, like any kind of body description. But when it's just because you feel like you have to, your heart's not in it, then it doesn't really, it's not really that helpful.
Thank you.
Last month we did a webinar for global civil servants, and we had quite a good attendance. And one of the panelists was blind from Canada, and she said, "I just don't find them useful. I don't need to know." So it is preference, personal preference. So we can't really say it is a good or bad. To a person who needs it is fantastic. The person who doesn't need it is irrelevant. So
kind of a bit like assistive technology, really.
Yeah, it's Marmite.
Chris, I wanted to ask you first, if I may, how do you actually, because there are so many new products, but how do you keep up to date with everything? And then how do you get the information out on what's good?
That's a good question. I think Wow, so let's take a run up. Obviously, how do I keep
Up to
understanding
date with
what the
everything.
what the
Yeah, yeah,
trends
yeah,
are, what's
yeah.
coming out? Yeah. So I think do you know what? A couple of years ago would have been quite easy, really, from our perspective, because there was a few bits coming out every now and again, and you could kind of follow it on the news and you could see what's going on. But I think from us, since obviously we had the pandemic, and that's really, really enhanced the speed as what we've seen assistive tech come across. I think it's really difficult. So I think probably from my perspective, if I was going to look and try and keep in the loop, um, people probably know me on the call as I love LinkedIn.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is brilliant for obviously search and keeping in touch with kind of what's coming out in the industry, and obviously linking into the people that are developing it. So I think probably for me, LinkedIn is probably my favorite go-to. But also look at different groups. So for example, there is a LinkedIn group as well. So it's a bit of a shout out really to the Champions of Accessibility Networks. There's quite a few people that we probably know aware that are obviously on that group. So that's a group run by Charlie Turrell from the
Okay.
BBC.
Yeah.
Really, really useful group, because I find sometimes I actually just got a question about assistive tech, and they're really, really knowledgeable in that group to be able to answer and give you some advice and kind of point in the right direction with some of the things that are coming out. I'm trying to think other ways that I find useful. So I think probably one of my main ways is actually going and talking to people. So obviously PwC's got quite a big network. I think we've got around about 22,000 staff, and actually just going out and talking to people and kind of understanding what they might need to help them or empower them in their work actually kind of leads us into thinking, let's have a look, see if there's something out there to kind of, where we can bridge it. So I think for us is understanding what people need, and then going on a bit of a research camp, which is really good for us. So yeah, does that kind of answer? I think for us
No,
it's
it does.
really, really
It
quick.
ties in as well, because both you're sort of at the front end of almost, but Kim, you're very much with the employee and looking at delighting the employee with assistive tech.
So
Do you work together a lot?
We do, yeah. I think I'm probably much more of a layperson in this conversation, where Chris has the tech hat on and I have the more of the HR hat on. But we do collaborate a lot together, which is brilliant. And I think something that we're really pleased to have established is sort of a regular working group between our teams, which has enabled us to collaborate lots around adjustments for individual employees, but also accessibility, and to try and champion some of these accessibility features across our workplace. And just thinking, for me, that's one of the organized ways that we try to stay on top of things, and we'll share webinars and resources with one another. We have kind of a shared Google Sheet, if you like, where we stick all of that. I guess organically for myself, in terms of keeping up on trends, I agree with Chris around social media. I'm not a huge Twitter or LinkedIn goer myself, but I do stalk people on there. And I think some of the disabled influencers out there on Twitter especially are brilliant, just to hear what's coming up. And they'll often kind of talk about what they use personally. And especially at the moment, where there just seems to be an explosion of new and exciting products coming out, it's a really good way to just get hints of what's out there and build up that list of things to look into.
Nasser, at our place, thank you, Kim. What do we get most commonly asked for, do you think?
Well, actually, the interesting part about my background, I did computer science, and I find technology very fascinating, and I'm always looking for new solutions, because I know what the problems we're facing in the society. I'm always looking for really good, affordable, sustainable, and easy to use solutions. And I always also look up to the big tech companies to come up with those as their free offering. So luckily, because I'm a kind of a high profile in the company, new solutions always come to me as well. Lots of companies come to me and say, we've got this new thing for mental health, or we've got this thing for virtual reality, or we've got this like captioning tool. So I get to see them first. I look at it and see whether it fits into what we're trying to achieve both in education and workplace. Once I am convinced that it actually has a good value and it's different to what other solutions are out there, I'll pass it to my team and say, well, give it a try. And we've really found some amazing tools in the past, which is basically, then we go out to all our clients and send them an innovation newsletter saying, this is something new, have a look at it. And it's just like keeping an eye open to all the new innovations to be able to do things better and cheaper and obviously more sustainably. Anyway.
Wonderful.
But that question should go to the great Christopher, because
well, I was going to say, Christopher, what's the most, apart from Google Glasses, which has got to be bonkers good, what else is there that you're really excited about?
Well, if I could answer just a little one thing to the last question, and then I'll move on to the
please.
next. To Chris's point, I'm active on LinkedIn, and I have everything forwarded to Twitter. I can't stand. I'm not a big fan of Twitter. Pardon me. But what I've found is I got a lot more out of LinkedIn when I started contributing to LinkedIn. When I found something that I thought was cool, other people saw it and they thought it was cool, and they start sharing stuff with me. So a hybrid between Chris and Nasser, the more you put out, the more you contribute, the more you get back. So for me, I read a lot. I read a lot of articles, and I share the stuff that I think is cool. I recently learned about protactile becoming considered a language in and of itself, which I just think is remarkable. So I shared it, and people seem to like it, and it builds us this momentum. Chris has got a great set of things that he shares on a regular basis with this beautiful yellow background and black, really strong contrast stuff. It's striking. So the more you contribute, the more you get back. Coming back to your question, Tracy, the glasses, they're not Google Glass, but the AR glass prototype that we shared last week is gorgeous. It's remarkable. This is something we've been working on for many years, and I'm really excited about sort of the adventure of AR as it comes into the technology and it moves us forward. What we're not saying we're going to fix the world. We're here to help people. We're going to use technology to make people's lives better. The magic of a wearable and augmented reality is profound. So you have captions like you saw on this video. I don't know if you noticed if you saw the Google I/O video, there was a picture of a person touching a real world menu and then information coming up. These are the kinds of things that having cameras on your head with access to the information that's around you, done in a private way, in a thoughtful way, in a conservative way, can really help people's lives. So for me, augmented reality is that future. That's the next mobile phone. I'm more excited about augmented reality than virtual reality, but virtual reality is actually a really interesting step towards the creation of augmented reality, in particular for the blind and low vision. Imagine having to describe a three-dimensional world in VR. What do you verbalize? How do you verbalize it? What happens when you move? What do you change? So having that sort of object model of description in virtual reality is really useful when you take away the virtual reality and you have real reality, the next generation. And then now we have computer vision telling us what's there. We have GPS and visual positioning systems, and we've already learned how to tell people about three-dimensional space. So the people who are blind and low vision will have a thoughtful, useful description of the world around them anywhere, whether in virtual space or real space. So for me, this virtual reality to augmented reality is a really interesting sort of path forward.
Yeah.
What I find these really incredibly exciting technologies, very, very fascinating to me, is that there are people out there who provide lots of solutions for lots of problems we've got, but they're not really aware of that kind of technology. It's actually trying to get that piece of technology and apply it to a real world problem. That's what I really get a lot of excited about. But one thing that I think maybe Chris could answer, and obviously Kim as well. When it comes to using these technologies, we always cross over to this privacy, security, compliance, governance. How do we overcome that in a corporate sector where blind people can't wear these cameras in order not to offend people that they might be recording something or might be a security risk? So what happens to that?
That's a really, really good question. I think probably from us, it's going back to looking at the developers themselves, because obviously, you're going to have developers that come in that perhaps this might be, I don't know, their first project out of university, and they've had this really fantastic idea, and perhaps they haven't got sight yet of perhaps what some of the corporates want around, the rigmarole of risk and that compliance area. So I think probably spending some time and helping people upskill in that as well, because at the end of the day, our business is built on trust. And obviously we've got to be responsible and look after that data that's in the firm. So obviously looking at assistive technology, giving our time to help people with, you know, upskilling and developing their products to be more accessible, to be more compliant as well, but also giving people a chance. And I think for us, one of the things that we have found is, you know, there are some areas that we just can't quite get there yet because of the way that they handle data. But then we've also got, you know, the ability there where people are now working from home more than they were before. So they've got obviously different environments, different spaces. We're not all fixed to, you know, a 4-foot desk now in the middle of a white office. There's a lot of differences where we've got closed spaces off now, where people can perhaps go and use voice dictation, you know, out the way off the floor, because that's where they may feel more comfortable, through to obviously working from home and being able to use, you know, things like Siri, for example, or, you know, some of the Alexa features. So I think we're there. I think we are getting there. It just might not quite look the way that we're expecting it to, but I do think, you know, in terms of that risk and that compliance, I think it's definitely an area that we're going to see a growth in.
I actually believe there is a massive shift in the risk appetite by corporations since the COVID. If I remember, Lucy organized a session in BDF task force for captioning. We had several people presenting. The biggest concern in the room was security. Who knows where this data will end up and what information are people able to capture? But overnight, everything just crashed down. Everyone's using captioning. Everyone's using Zoom. Yeah. So I think the attitudes have changed, certainly. How much of that can we rely on to be able to bring technologies which will be quite transformational much quicker than we used to? Is that, I mean, Google must know this because you're really at the front end of this.
That's really a personal choice and a company by company choice, what their risk to benefit tolerance is. I really think it's more on Kim's side of the house, where the people who have the needs have to be able to feel comfortable enough to advocate for themselves and say, this is a tool that I need and here are the reasons why. Kim, do you want to talk about how you sort of make that pitch?
Yeah, sure. I think coming back to what Chris H said, it's really the collaboration piece. So as well as collaborating externally with the vendors, the developers, there's collaboration internally with whoever manages your risk procedures. And that's going to vary organization by organization. But we would talk to our risk teams. We would also talk, most importantly, to our colleagues from our disability awareness network and the individuals coming forward to us who have those needs, get an understanding of what those needs are. And I think it's taking that awareness of the barriers and the tools that exist to remove those barriers to the teams that have less exposure to those, but who ultimately own those governance processes, and actually working with them to say, this is important, this is why it's important. And although we have to really carefully balance our approach, given the kind of organization we are and how we work, how can we get to a resolution on this and take products through that process? So I think if I had any sort of tips, it's really try and get to know the right people internally if you're trying to get these things happening in your organizations.
How are you actually promoting internally, Kim, assistive technology? How do you actually get that message out to your employees? I mean,
it's huge, and there's a lot of noise at the moment. When I say noise, there's a lot just of communications, of everything, lots of things demanding our attention, right? So for us, it's about having kind of the right message at the right time. And what we try and do, just because there's so much content in a huge organization like ours, although we really want to get this onto everybody's radar, we have to be a bit tactical. So as part of the inclusion team, what we've done in general is create an inclusion calendar that runs monthly themes. Disability is always one of those themes. We try and tie it to International Day of Persons with Disabilities or Disability History Month. We also pick out key dates like Global Accessibility Awareness Day, which is this Thursday.
Yep.
And we'll do targeted events on quite specific themes. We've been really lucky, I suppose, to have built relationships with Apple, Google, and Microsoft. And we've had each of those organizations do demos of what their products do for our staff. But I'd say even if you don't have those enterprise level relationships, that information's out there and you can share that, you can run through that with colleagues. We do communications and we try and keep it quite simple, uncluttered, just this is what you can do. Here's a tip. Here's how to find out more. We'll share videos and kind of images with image descriptions, of course. The communications about accessibility have to be accessible themselves. But yeah, it's really about tying that to those key dates in the year where we know we'll get traction, and just continually keeping it going. It can't be one and done. We just got to keep on.
It's a lot of work,
putting it out there.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
We because we are on the cold face with regards to technology coming in, we actually find having that dialogue with the IT departments extremely useful, because we have quite a large number of corporate clients who understandably have the anxieties about new technologies entering the IT state. So very often they start with the position, I'm not sure whether we can get this through our governance, it will take such a long time. When you explain some of the basic information, they said, oh, it's not as bad as that. So one of the best things we've managed to do is to get all the software vendors, the popular ones, to actually agree on this global licensing agreement where you need a single activation key. That way the IT departments don't really worry about version control or having to manage several different versions of the same software, and also they can actually deploy from center rather than having to do individual machines. So some of these things that we've managed to negotiate with the vendors will make it much easier for IT departments to actually approve software are useful for the employee much quicker. But definitely it's something that is getting better, especially with the Google and Microsoft being at the front line of trying to promote assistive technology and accessibility. It makes it much easier to have that conversation.
Can I ask everybody, thank you, NASA, what they recommend for the most intuitive speech to text? Thank you for the question, Gillian. Anyone got thoughts on that?
Or does it have to be a free app or something you'd pay for?
Well, if you've got somebody free and then something that you can pay for, and then people have a choice.
I would probably say, obviously, the paid version. For me personally, and this is just on personal opinion, I've always seen Dragon as being the most effective because of obviously the way that it manages profiles. Effectively, you could have multiple different profiles to suit your day, but also different profiles for your backgrounds as well. So that would be the paid version. And I think for me, it's got to look at where best and the main thing is how clear the audio is going in. So for me, you tend to find mobile phones, they have a really good microphone in them to start with. So, looking at that would help. So I think for me, it's just the built-in stuff in a perhaps an iPhone. I tend to find that's quite accurate, very accurate for you.
Chris, Kim,
the two areas.
Thoughts on the intuitive speech to text?
Do you want to go, Chris? And then I'll.
Sure. I'm a little partial to the tools we have on Android. There's a product called Live Transcribe, which is free on Android, and it provides a real-time transcription in over 80 different languages, which you can copy paste. There's also the Recorder app, which does similar kind of things, but with more of a recording perspective. So you get full transcripts, and you can search by transcripts. You can search by sounds. It's quite cool. And then there's also some interesting things that are coming out, not yet in the UK, but there's a neat application, a neat project we have called Project Relate, which allows someone to create their own dedicated voice model. So you read in a couple hundred words, and with that, we can create a dedicated model just for you on your device. And you can use this to dictate, you can use this to engage with your assistant on your Android phone. It's really quite powerful. It's not yet here in the UK, but it is. We're working on it, and it hopefully should be here at some point. Again, it's called Project Relate.
Wow.
We should look out for that. When's it due?
I can't say when it's due. We're having to work through some interesting challenges.
Okay. Thank you. Kim?
I think for me, and I can only go based off of what I've tried personally, it's going to be some of the inbuilt features that you can get kind of through Windows, through Google. So we use Google Workspace and Google Docs, Google Slides, and I've tried out the voice typing in Google Docs, and it's pretty accurate, I have to say. You have to use a headset, I think is best, like a headset that I'm wearing today with a microphone. And then for Google Slides as well, you can dictate the speaker notes, and it's very easy easy to switch on in the settings. And I think generally just exploring the accessibility settings within the operating systems and the programs and apps that you have already, from what I've been able to tell over the past few years, they're getting a lot more accurate.
Wonderful. I think we've got a question before we go on. Have we got a question as a day?
Yes, Sarah raised her hand. Do you want me to allow her to talk?
Yes, please, if you can do. Sarah, what was your question? Can you hear us, Sarah?
Yes.
Ah, what was your question? We can hear you, yes.
Yes, we've just, I'm representing Lime Assistive Technology. We're a new company who started out with a keyboard that I designed to eliminate the need for a key guard. But now we've expanded into text-to-speech and speech-to-text software.
Right.
And we've just become the UK reseller for the Dutch Alinea product. And within the Alinea online option, you have access to a web application that allows the creation of speech via text. And more importantly, it's got very good text-to-speech facilities for proofreading what you've actually entered.
Wonderful. Sarah, is this Lime Tech UK?
Yeah, I'll put the website address on the chat.
That would be
Well,
wonderful. Thank you.
But we're a new company called Lime Assistive Technology, and we're based in Cornwall. But as I say, we started off existence because of the issues around key cards.
Right.
And the hygiene issues. I don't know whether NASA remembers me.
I remember you very well, Sarah. We actually helped you with the, trying to find the market for you, and you were developing it. That was great product. Well done, and I'm glad that you're still working on it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very proud of this, how far it's come.
That's wonderful, Sarah.
Thank you
so much for your question. Please do put it in the chat, the website.
I will,
thank you.
So shall I just, on this voice recognition, which is really an important one. Again, I'm really excited some of the new developments I've seen. I mean, the problem with this emergence of new technology, it takes such a long time to enter the corporate space, partly because of the governance, compliance, and approval. I've seen recently in the BET show, I saw something from Microsoft about live captioning, live stream captioning. It was incredibly accurate. It was actually captioning a basketball game, American basketball NBA game. It's fast speaking, and it was so accurate, even expressions. So I can see that happening across all platforms, but it will take a long time for companies to move from Windows 10 to Windows 11. As we know from previous experience, it took about several years to go from Windows 7 to Windows 10. But for personal users, it's absolutely brilliant. Microsoft obviously owns the Dragon now, but I think they see more and more applications in a specialist area like health to use Dragon. But the standard Windows Office, and Google is a perfect example for many years. It's such a good kind of level of accuracy. If you want to use it, it's there. It's free. And especially for education.
We've had a couple of questions in. Richard Morton, asked about bug fixing on assistive technology. Apparently there are some common bugs still around. Who's responsible for fixing those things if it's a free resource?
I can try to answer some of it. It's not often the bug with the app, with the application. It could be the conflict it has with other resources. So you might actually have Dragon working perfectly fine for one user, but having some security software in the background, it might clash, or it might have. So it's difficult to also go to the vendor who makes the assistive technology, because they say, look, it's working fine. So often we get involved with a lot of that and have to then liaise with the developer, the vendor, and the client to figure out what the problem is,
Right.
and hopefully it is a big issue. Absolutely, that's one of the headaches that IT people could do without.
And Chris Holloway, we've got a lady called Ellie who's connected with 3 other Chris Holloways in an effort to get in touch with you. So Ellie, we've sent in the chat, we've actually put Chris's and Christopher's and Kim's contact details. So I'm sure if you now stalk them, they'd be quite happy to connect with you.
Yeah, I've put it
they're
all
really
in,
good read.
Tracy.
Yeah, thank you so much,
I'll put all
Anna.
the links in. I'm trying to do it as fast as I can, but just to remind everybody, there will be a big resource page sent out with the recording. So you'll have all these links and all these handles and all these contact details in that PDF.
Wonderful.
I'll
Thank
go
you
away
so
now.
much. So how does I mean, that kind of moves on when I was thinking, Kim, about what you do. How does assistive technology actually fit in with the wider D&I strategy within a company? Because that's all the GDPR stuff again. It's all keeping abreast of what's new. It's all what's going to fit in with your existing technology. How do you do it?
Well, it's something we haven't solved, I don't think, but definitely it's hugely important. I mean, it touches on everything, right? I think there's 2 parts to when I think about assistive technology. There's the tools and features that are there for individual users to overcome any barriers they may be facing at that point in time with that task. But then there's also for everybody, it's making what we do accessible so that it's going to be compatible with tools. It's going to be as barrier-free as possible from the point of creation. So when I think about a big part of what we do in inclusion is all the comms and awareness raising and resource creation. If we're delivering a presentation, we need to make sure that those slides are going to be able to be read by a screen reader. So we need to be connecting with Chris's team to understand the screen reader technologies we provide and that colleagues use, and that we can make sure that everything's working. And then we also need to be upskilling people on what's available and how to make those slides accessible. So really, it's all sort of interconnected, I think. Assistive technology is a key enabler for our colleagues. It's not the only enabler, and I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat and Q&A, and I saw someone else mentioning, it's not, how do we make sure it's not just tech and we're talking to environment, we're talking to other kinds of adjustments, and that's a key part of the workplace adjustments group that Chris and I are part of that I mentioned earlier, where we have those conversations. But yeah, to come back to the point, it's making sure that the assistive tech is there as a key enabler as part of our disability inclusion strategy, but it's making sure across the board there's awareness of accessibility, because it's going to touch on our comms around race and ethnicity awareness. It's going to touch on what we do around gender. Everything needs to be accessible. So it's very interconnected. I think we couldn't really do without it.
I mean, we're quite keen to encourage companies, and certainly through the DWP with Disability Confident, to look at what is the resources that they've already paid for, the operating systems and the Android phones and the Apple phones, to actually look at what they can access themselves to make people's working day easier and better. And certainly there are a lot of options that are out there. Christopher, you touched on a few with Android phones. What else is there that you've got with Google that's fab?
Well, I think an important mindset shift that we need to make is away from the medical model to the social model of disability and accessibility. Accessibility is a tool, and it's one of many tools. And as technology evolves more and more, you have these multifunction devices like your mobile phone that can provide you a magnifier. It can also do a screen reader. It can read for you the text in the real world around you. All of these things exist today. And we need to make sure that the policies that support and provide these kind of technologies recognize that things like mobile phones, yes, you can talk on them. Most people don't anymore, but you can. And these telephones, these devices empower people to live their fullest lives when it comes to school, work, and at home. So I think that's an important thing that we need to get to is a realization that these multifunction devices are actually assistive technology, but assistive to everybody. They help everybody do the same kind of things.
Somebody's sorry, I was going to interrupt then, because somebody's just made the valid point that if you've actually used the licensing on your own software, your own individual software, if you're going to use it in a corporate environment, you're going to have to pay for a license fee. So there is an issue around that as well. But you're absolutely right. Our everyday phones, of which mine's an Android phone, they are our assistive technology, aren't they? I mean, our kids are using them, everyone is.
Well, we actually find a lot of the usage of assistive technologies in productivity, not in disability area. If you go to some of the multinationals, they use Dragon not for as an assistive technology tool, as a productivity tool. So it is essentially making our lives easier, regardless of what barriers we're facing. I mean, there's a question from Bonnie from USA about having two teenage kids with autism. I mean, there are so much technologies out there, and that's probably a problem because people are confused of what to use. It very much depends on what barriers you're facing, and there is some solution to help you overcome that barrier. So autism is not a single function deficit. It's lots of things can be affected by autism. You just need to know what is it they can't do, and then you'll find a piece of technology that will help to do it.
Is there a good place to go to, NASA, to find this information out?
It very much, it really, we look at this in a very simplistic term. What is the impact? What are the issues? What are the things you can't do? And there's always a piece of technology that they can do. That starts with a kind of assessment. Doesn't have to be medicalized assessment. It could be just a simple technology guy saying, okay, well, tell me what issues you'd be facing as a dyslexic person, or if you are visually impaired, or you are hearing impairment. What are the things you can't do and you want to do? And then here is something you could try. This is an app that automatically tunes to the frequencies your ears can hear, rather than having a hearing aid. These are all out there. You just need to know technology, you know the impact, and then you can find the solution.
Well, what about for kids? Because we're talking about for adults. But what about for young people? Is assistive technology around apart from what we've got, Christopher, already? Is there a lot of focus on young people in schools, for example, or transitioning into the world of work?
It's definitely the one and the same, because you have the same ability to become independent in living. So I'm sure, Chris, in PwC, you're looking for young graduates to come in to be job ready. And if they have some disabilities and they've had some solutions in the university, do they bring that with them, or do they actually hide it from the employers? These are very important questions.
I don't know, do they? Kim?
So I think from our side, I mean, I say more so recently, we welcome anything like that. So if we have anybody coming into the firm that is using different technologies, we want to hear about it. So we're very open and clear, and talk through where we're looking at, what we can do and what we can't do. And there's been a couple of occasions more so recently where actually we've challenged. We've taken the assistive technology that person perhaps wants to use, and we've challenged some of our internal policies and actually gone to teams. And obviously for us, sometimes, and I think NASA touched on it there earlier, people, it's very easy to say no very quickly if they don't understand something fully. So, our team specifically, and obviously with Kim as well, we will go to some of the other teams internally and say, look, do you understand what this is actually doing and how this is helping somebody to obviously do their job? And you know what, at the end of the day, if they can do their job better than everybody else, we're going to benefit as a firm anyway, whilst making sure that person's empowered. And I think for us, it's there's been a few recently where we're looking more towards technology that helps with things like task management and prioritization. Very, very busy space at the moment.
Yeah.
Where actually we've asked ourselves some really good questions around, why have we always said no to this? It's actually really good, and everybody can benefit from this. So I think that's kind of where we're sort of sitting at the moment. I think we've got somebody talking. I can't hear.
Yes, hold on. I think Azad, you're in the background. Somebody's
Kimini, we can hear.
Yeah,
I'll mute myself, but there's no one else.
No, I think it's Azad's background. I think it might be.
Yeah, I'll send her a quick message.
Yeah, to you. So
we've also done some other things as well around, more specific focus groups to kind of look at, some of the technologies that are there, and take those forward and talk to sort of our clients.
Yeah.
So just one moment. I will stop that. Okay.
There we go. Oh,
yeah, that's that.
Can I
ask?
back to? Oh,
sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, Christopher. Carry on.
I just wanted to. I was triggered. A thought was triggered by what Nasser asked about children, and I wanted to talk about the way often assistive technology is there's an assumption that kids are just little adults. And that's not, and I think we need to be thoughtful that that's not necessarily true. They may have a different stature, but the way the brains work, the way the voices are, means you can't really treat a child as a little adult. When it comes to things like machine learning, you really want to somehow safely, with all of the right privacy guarantees, make sure that you have a data sample that is representative of people of different ages, people of different races and genders, because it makes a difference in terms of how things like AI-based assistive technologies can function. So something that an 18-year-old, a college-ready kid, will be very different than an 8-year-old kid.
Absolutely right, Chris. In fact, it might be a useful mention. We did a pilot for schools to learn assistive technology. Here, there are two emphases. One is for teachers to use assistive technologies in a classroom, so make it like mainstream tool to help kids understand better, become more independent. And the second part is actually for those older students to be able to use assistive technology to help them with the challenges. So you're totally right. It's not a solution that could actually work for all ages, but you could use it in a way that would be useful to those kids who have better engagement and better learning experience.
I think AI is quite an interesting one overall, though. I mean, I have a lot of issues around companies using it within the recruitment process because they've not done that piece, Christopher, that you just talked about having a huge sample base. And invariably, you find out that they interviewed 5 white men and they based all of their AI assumptions on that. And of course, the machine then learns more about how to be perhaps less unconsciously biased than we would like it. And I think that's going to be a huge issue moving forward. Do you find that much, Kim?
It's definitely something that we're conscious of just because of the dialogue around it. And there's been a couple of really interesting documentaries out about it recently. I don't know if others have seen, I think it was either a BBC or a Channel 4 documentary actually looking at the AI used by some of these video interviewing platforms. Well, I'm really pleased to say we don't use AI decision making in ours, but everything is kind of human screened. But definitely we're conscious of always getting that balance between taking that product off the shelf and making sure it does what it needs to do for the purposes we're purchasing it for, but then making sure that it's accessible. And if that isn't possible to get to that level of accessibility, well, what adjustments do we then make? How do we bespoke that experience for an individual coming through? So yeah, we're looking very much at the adjustments we can make in our recruitment space as well as in our workplace. And I think there's different considerations because when say you've got a candidate, they're not using your organizational systems yet. They're going to be on their own laptop or their own phone. So we need to have an understanding of how we can meet them where they're at using the tech they're using as well. So when we talk to our suppliers, we're asking, well, which screen readers does this work with? Which magnifiers does this work with? Because we can't guarantee that they'll be using the products that we use internally. They may be using kind of free options. They may be using those inbuilt options. So it comes back to that conversation collaboration piece, but with you and the candidate as opposed to you and the colleague.
But how do you know what you don't know as an employer? How do you know? How do you know where to start with this stuff?
I mean, it's a huge question. Definitely, I think you start by asking the question, actually, to be honest. You might not know the answer, but I think we can all think of a few questions we'd ask, and we'd just simply say, go to say a vendor, say, is this accessible? And if they come back, their answer is often quite telling in how you take that conversation. Because they may come back and say, well, yes, we've got the web content accessibility guidance conformance, or they might come back and say, no idea, can we work with you on it? And then you can start that journey. So I think it will really depend on what it is. There isn't going to be the same considerations for every piece of software or every process or task that you come across, but start by asking the questions. If you can be confident to talk about things that you don't necessarily know a lot about, I think that's a great place to start. And also, we haven't, I think, given them a shout out yet, but there's heaps of free resources out there, absolutely heaps. And sometimes even to the extent it could be tricky to know where to go. But just a couple to mention: Business Disability Forum. We link in with Technology Task Force. They've got free resources on their website. They just released some yesterday for Global Accessibility Awareness Day around accessibility training. So even if you do one thing, go and look at some of those training courses and look at the basics. There's loads of information. And then AbilityNet, also free resources aimed at organizations and individuals. So if you want to know how to use assistive tech yourself, they're a great place to start.
I think the biggest influence we could make is on supply chain, because I have recently we're trying to look at some IT platform. We asked the basic question: is it accessible? Oh, we don't do government contracts, so we don't really need to worry about that. I said, hold on, disabled people are disabled people, regardless. You have customers, and they went away, came back, said, well, there are things we can do, there are things we can't. Simple as that. But at least they know it's not just for contracts, it's actually for users. So hopefully we should push that button a bit more from the corporate angle.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, you've mentioned in the chat about the BDF accessibility maturity model, which is fantastic. There's also a new one that's recently been launched, Jodie Greer's maturity model, which again is a free model. So there is quite a lot of free resource out there. It's kind of, again, paring it down and looking at what you need and what's going to work within your business and your organization. I'm very conscious of time. We've got Chris and Kim for about another 5 minutes. Is there specific, somebody brought up a question earlier about, do you ask people to wear a sunflower lanyard if they've got non-visible disabilities, if we're doing calls like this? Do you think it helps? Is there another way of people telling you about their non-visible disabilities?
Shall I start on that one? I think it's very much up to the individual. So in terms of what we do at PwC is people can absolutely wear the sunflower lanyard. I think there's the individual choice, but then you've got to make sure there's the awareness of what that symbol means. And I think for a lot of people, especially coming out of the pandemic, it was also used to signify those who weren't able to wear masks for certain kind of access or comfort reasons. And I think it became a bit of a symbol for that as well. So for us internally, it's actually, we're talking to our disability network about it at the moment because they'd like to promote it. And we think, well, brilliant. If people would like that option and would like to be able to do that, absolutely. But we've got to make sure that people are going to know what that means and how to respond. Because I think importantly, the origin of that scheme was in customer service settings, and it was to give awareness that extra support might be needed. So we want to be, is this to raise awareness of support you might need, or is it to start the conversation? How would you like this to be received? So it's something that we're talking to our network about. But for calls, say like this, it's a really interesting question. And I think, definitely as organizers, when we do events, we make sure there's that place to have a dialogue. People can reach out. We always highlight in invites and communications, if you have any accessibility needs, please let us know, and we give them a means to raise that confidentially. But totally comes down to individual preference in the end, I think.
Okay, any other thoughts from any of the other chaps?
I'd be interested to kind of hear what other people's opinions are on it. I mean, for us, we have a process internally where people can disclose if they want to, and obviously we go through, and it all goes through a full workplace adjustments process. So usually one of the team knows kind of how we can best help somebody and if there's anything specific they need. But I think also as well is pointing back to some of the free assistive technology that's built in. I think it's really, really important to keep that going, because obviously it just means that somebody perhaps that doesn't want to disclose still has access to some assistive technology. And obviously for us, that's the most important thing. For us, it's giving that knowledge forwards, making sure people in the firm are aware. So obviously Kim mentioned it there. We do provide training sessions internally as well to staff. Perhaps somebody would like their team to understand a little bit more about some of their needs and requirements, and we'll come in and we'll do a training session. It's not specifically aimed towards that individual. It's more aimed towards the team, just to understand kind of what we need to do and how we can change. So I think for us, it's just, it goes back to the upskilling, doesn't it? And making sure that people understand, where they need to go, what they need to do. And I think for us, it's just removing some of those disclosure barriers.
Yeah, thank you. Christopher, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I've been following the chat here. I had never heard of it. So I think it's important if we were going to have a symbol that represented something, we'd have to have a common symbol that everyone would recognize. And
that makes
it seems
sense.
the sunflower's gotten a little bit messy.
Yep.
So that may not be the right one, but I think the idea of having something that is relevant, that is emotionally not charged would not be a bad idea. But to Kim's point, it really has to be an individual's decision because they may not want to disclose. So we have to be thoughtful about what to choose and then how to initiate it.
Thank you. We've Anna, have you got a question, or is that an old hand?
Have I got my hand up?
Yes.
No, there's a Nicola.
All that time, I didn't even realise.
There's also a Nicola Barrett has got hands up, so maybe.
Sorry about that.
Nicola, what's your question? Can you hear us? I don't know whether we can let her.
Oh, actually, she's. Oh, yeah, she's still looking at her hand. Nicola, can you put in the chat and then we'll see if we can answer that, because Chris has got to leave for another important
training
webinar.
Session, indeed,
yes.
on assistive technology, I think.
Indeed.
Can I ask before you go, guys, what you've got? Oh, Nicola, right? Can we hear you now?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I was just about to put in the chat. It was just a suggestion. You see, we're talking about computers, but what about application forms? We can put them on there. That's how the employer could discuss it with all the employees and the staff when they're filling out their form for the job or something like that.
Mm.
What do you suggest?
What are you asking, whether or not people should be asked if they need assistive technology?
No, the program.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's difficult for employees to discuss certain things with,
of course,
with people and with clients and with customers.
Yeah.
And staff. So what I'm suggesting, while they're filling out the application form, they could put yes or no on the application form. If it's a yes, you know how to approach it. If it's a no, you don't talk about it.
Yes.
That disclosure is obviously holy grail of of trying to find more inclusive workplace. People don't often trust what will happen with that information. Therefore, sometimes they're reluctant to do it. And sometimes people don't realize they have a disability. They just think they are that way and they've always been that way. So very hard to sort of get that right. But yes, indeed, if people were to say that's the need and they want to discuss it, it'd be great.
It's not mental health though. Some people don't discuss it, but if there's a question asked on the application form, they say yes or no.
Yeah.
And then the employer know how to approach the client or the staff or whoever it is, how to go about it.
Okay.
Because they'll be trained by you or the company and know how to expect, what to expect and what to say to the person.
Of course.
There's an awful lot around disability awareness and disability etiquette, Nicola, that companies spend a lot of time and resource on to make sure that individuals, should they need assistive technology, are actually quite comfortable in discussing that in a non-medical way. Somebody's mentioned, I think it's Gillian, on the chat about companies asking for diagnosis before they provide assistive technology. And I think most of the companies that certainly we deal with, it works on a social model, not on a medical model. But Nicola, thank you very much for your question, bring that up.
About Chris and Kim, are you guys okay?
Yes.
Or you want so because you need to leave soon, or you're okay for a few more minutes?
Yeah, I think we're going to need to drop off.
Okay.
Yeah,
just want to thank you before you go.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. It's
really appreciate it. We've got the resources from you guys, and that's wonderful. And
Thanks
now we can talk to young Christopher to find out what he's got in the last 6 minutes. Thank you.
All
very
Google
kind.
all the time.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to reach out, I think my contact details are being shared because conscious haven't kept up with the chat. But thanks so much.
I have, Kim. Do not worry.
Thank you,
You're going to
be
inundated.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Kim. So
Christopher, can I ask you, What started you on this? What got you passionate and interested in assistive technology?
Oh, it was because my product wasn't accessible.
What
So,
was your product?
so at the time, it was about 8 years ago. I was the lead technical program manager for Google Play Music, and
Oh, okay.
we had a test engineer come into our meeting. She turned on voiceover, button, 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 button. I asked, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, this is Google Play Music for someone who's blind." And as a musician, I was offended. And I thought, well, that's stupid. How do they use it? And she said, well, that's why I'm here. And that was my introduction, because my product wasn't accessible. So within a couple of months, I volunteered to take on accessibility for all of Google Play. And then I went to Daydream and worked on AR and VR for a couple of years. And then about 5 years ago, I joined the central accessibility team and have been doing that full time ever since.
Wow.
Now, do you know how many millions you've helped? That has been amazing.
It is work that makes me proud to be at Google. It is work that makes me get up in the morning. I joke that I sometimes wish there were two of me so I could do more, but I think my wife wouldn't appreciate that.
But when iPhone came out first, and I noticed those accessibility features, a lot of people didn't really think much of it, but that was just a game changer for disabled people, blind people, because essentially overnight they started being counted, they mattered, and they could now communicate. So, but these are the things that nobody talks about, nobody boasts about, brags about, because you think, why shouldn't we? And I mean, what you just described, Chris, is exactly at the heart of it. If it makes such a big difference to so many people, why don't the other companies do it as a standard?
I mean, there's a fabulous story, sorry, interrupting, of Kellogg's actually making their packets, Kellogg's cornflakes, making their packets with Braille on the side now, because it's good practice. But you were going to say about companies, why don't they?
I think every company is going to be different. And I know your question was more rhetorical, but I think there gets to be a point when we're going to be at a point, and I hopefully it won't be in the too distant future, where the recognition of the business case, the ROI of accessibility, when we have the aging boomers, we have the Zoomers who've been so attached to cameras and things, we're reaching a point where the assistive technology is going to be a competitive advantage, where the people who know, and it's really cool right now watching them, like the Googles and the Apples, and the Microsofts literally compete on accessibility. It's a blast. And in all honesty, I mean, we compete tooth and nail in terms of technology, but we're also really helpful when it comes to helping the community behind the scenes. So it's sort of a frenemy situation.
But you actually mentioned it. We had a conversation a couple of days ago how you banter with Hector Minter about, but at the same time you collaborate. You're not. This is not for competition. It's for collaboration, because what you do impacts so many millions, and in fact, it has such a potential to narrow the gap in poverty in the third world, because the one thing every person in the sub-Saharan Africa has got is a mobile phone. And that is the enabler. So if you've got the technologies that are accessible and they can use it, then that's actually their means to the world, their means to communicate, their means to become independent and start earning. So I think this collaboration is really what is very exciting. I don't see any competitive edge when it comes to Microsoft talking about accessibility any more than Google, any more than Apple. They all say we've got to do it, and they're actually working together to do it.
Yeah, and as we as platform owners, I personally believe that it is up to us to use our technologies to make it easier for other people to have accessible experiences. If you took a look at the web aim, we still have an ungodly number of websites that are inaccessible. So I think it's important for platform owners to do what they can to make things more accessible. In Google Chrome, for example, we have English captions for any audio that's on your web. And it's local processing, so there's nothing being sent to the cloud. So if in English you can have captions for everything. So these are the kind of things that a platform owner has responsibility, I think, to do, because not everyone's going to build it. So you see things like TalkBack or VoiceOver adding OCR into pictures. So we're taking those steps forward to sort of help raise the bar of all content for all people.
I think it's really exciting times.
Chris, we talked about accessibility, but I need one question to ask you because you're the only one here from the big tech giants. What about access? What about democratizing access to everyone? Like make it cheaper for these solutions to work on low-cost devices. Well, you know, you can have voice recognition on a nice computer. When are we going to get the time to? When are we going to actually get more people to have access to good internet speed? And by that, they can use very low-cost devices to do the kind of thing we just described about text-to-speech, speech-to-text, you know, captioning and all that. Because most of the people across the world probably can't afford to buy those devices in order to use these assistive technologies.
This is exactly why I'm here doing the work that I'm doing. I'm flying to Nairobi on Saturday. This is Google's first deep engagement on accessibility in sub-Saharan Africa. And we are going there to try to understand what's reasonable, what we should expect, what are the power constraints, what are the device constraints, what are the internet constraints, and how do we develop platforms and technologies that can take those into consideration. Google, Microsoft, Apple will never solve the access problem. That's bigger than all of us. That's up to the governments and those organizations. But we can take steps to make sure that we work on the smallest phone with the least amount of data and provide a rich, robust experience as much as we can when you have a low power device. And when you have access to the cloud, for example, then we can provide more functionality. If we're willing to share context of like who you are or where you are, we can provide even more functionality. So the more you're willing to share and the better we are at doing things at the lowest level, the best experience we can have for everyone, no matter where they are.
Christopher and Nasser, I'm going to cut you off then because we've reached the end. I wanted to say a huge thank you, Christopher. I really appreciate it. And we'd love to hear how Nairobi goes. So if we can call upon you at some time, we'd love to hear it.
And tell me about the balloons you were sending up to give internet access to these countries. I think that was a good project, if it ever got anywhere.
Perhaps in the next call.
Next call.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody who's listened in. We'll send the resource pages out. And Christopher, once again, thank you so much.
Christopher, it's been a privilege to have you on
Such
this.
A pleasure.
It has.
And we hope to see you in more of the Business Disability Forum Technology Task Force, because you're a great contributor. And I think we could really learn and benefit from Google's input. And I'm sure Lucy is going to say yay. But anyway, if she's still here.
Lovely. Thank you so much,
everyone.
Chat.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.